The chandelier light fractured into diamonds, scattering across the marble lobby of the Grand Palais Hotel. The gala was a performance, and everyone knew it. Champagne flutes tilted, jewels caught the flash of cameras, and the air itself hummed. With expectation, who would be photographed, who would be whispered about, who would be forgotten? Monica adjusted the silk of her midnight gown and kept to the periphery. She had promised herself she would only stay an hour. Long enough to be polite, short enough to escape without incident. She had even chosen black deliberately, a dress designed not to compete with sequins or feathers, just to disappear into shadow. But disappearing was impossible when he was here. Across the ballroom, Daniel held court. Her ex-husband, smiling like a man who had never lost, never bled, never begged. The cameras loved him, as they always had. He thrived under their gaze, while Monica had learned to shrink beneath it. Ladies and gentlemen, a reporter's voice rang. Can we get a look at the ring? And there it was. Daniel lifted Sophia's hand, his fiancée's, toward the light, fingers laced with hers, as though presenting a crown. The stone was grotesque in size, a diamond that screamed excess, screaming louder than the applause that followed. Flashbulbs detonated. The crowd gasped in unison, their envy disguised as admiration. Sophia tilted her head, her golden hair falling just so, lips parting in a laugh rehearsed 100 times. Monica felt the sting, sharp and clean. It wasn't jealousy. No, she told herself, not that. It was the memory of standing there once. Ring heavy on her own finger, Daniel whispering lines into her ear about eternity and loyalty. Words that curdled, words that bruised when repeated too often. Her hand drifted to her clutch. Inside, her daughter's drawing, a folded scrap of paper she'd carried like a talisman, burned against her fingertips. A crooked house, 2 figures with smiling faces, and the words "me" and "mommy" scrawled in pink crayon. No father. He had been erased without her asking. Children told truths adults could not. Poetic, someone murmured near her, too loudly. The ex-wife watching while the new queen takes the stage. She turned her head slightly, meeting the eyes of a woman she didn't know, a socialite with too much rouge and too much satisfaction. Their gaze held for one taut second. Monica broke it first. The sting deepened. Mommy, when will we go home? The echo of her daughter's voice threaded through her mind, though Lily was not here. She had left her with a sitter, safe, tucked in with stories and warm milk. When will we go home? Monica inhaled, steadying herself. Her therapist had warned her. Triggers would come uninvited. They always did. The gala was a trigger factory. Monica? Her name sliced through the noise. A familiar baritone. She turned. Daniel stood only a few feet away, Sophia's hand still draped casually in his own. He had the audacity to look surprised, as if her presence were an inconvenience to his evening. I didn't expect to see you here, he said, voice warm, practiced for an audience. She smiled politely, lips taut. It's a charity event, Daniel. I support the cause. Of course. His eyes darted toward the cameras still lingering. Always the patron. Sophia offered a smile that was more weapon than welcome. Monica, right? We've heard so much about you. We. The word lodged in Monica's chest like a shard. Yes, Monica said, her tone level. I imagine you have. Sophia laughed lightly, but it was brittle, nervous. She clung tighter to Daniel's arm that Monica's gaze flicked to the ring, catching another flash of light. It was absurd, gaudy, heavy enough to drown a hand. For a brief, ugly moment, Monica hoped it would. Congratulations, she added finally. Each syllable a shard of glass she forced herself to swallow. I hope it brings you both everything you deserve. Daniel tilted his head, something unspoken flickering in his eyes. Challenge, maybe, or warning. Then he nodded once, slow, measured, as if marking territory. The cameras snapped again. To anyone watching, it was civil, polite. A modern fairy tale. Old wife meets new fiancé, smiles exchanged, no blood spilled. But inside, Monica's ribs felt like a cage tightening. Later, in the ladies' room, she braced herself against the porcelain sink, staring into the mirror. Her mascara had smudged at the corner, faint, almost imperceptible. She fixed it with the precision of someone performing surgery. Behind her, 2 women entered mid-conversation. Can you believe she showed up tonight? Bold. Or desperate. Maybe both. Imagine watching your ex move on like that. With her. Their laughter was muffled as they disappeared into stalls, but the words lingered, sour in the air. Monica closed her eyes. In the dark, memory rushed back. Daniel's voice during their marriage, sharp as a whip. You'll never survive without me. You'll fade. And maybe he believed it. Maybe everyone did, but she hadn't faded. She was still here, breathing, watching, waiting. She splashed cold water against her wrists, grounding herself, then reapplied her lipstick with a steady hand. When she returned to the ballroom, the music had shifted, strings swelling, laughter rising. Daniel and Sophia were still encircled, a kingdom of admirers. This time, Monica didn't linger. She slipped out a side exit, heels echoing against stone, night air hitting her lungs like freedom. Outside, the city's hum was softer, more human. A driver opened the door of a waiting car, but Monica paused. Across the street, a boy held his mother's hand as they crossed toward a subway entrance. She watched the small gesture, simple, ordinary, yet piercing. She thought of Lily again, not of rings, not of cameras, not of Daniel. Only of her daughter's small hand wrapped inside her own, warm and unyielding. The single tether keeping her upright. As she settled into the car, she pulled the crayon drawing from her clutch and unfolded it carefully, smoothing the creases. She let her eyes rest on the crooked house, the pink smiles, the missing figure. Flashbulbs might tell one story. This picture told another. And Monica knew, with a certainty that chilled her bones, that tonight was not the end of Daniel's show. It was only the first spark. The fire was still to come. The city was still talking. By morning, the photo of Daniel lifting Sophia's hand had already gone viral, splashed across news feeds, dissected in podcasts, immortalized in gossip columns. The king has found his queen, they wrote. The ex-wife lingers like a ghost in black silk. Monica read none of it. She only heard the echo of whispers in the grocery line, the sting of sidelong glances at the coffee shop. Even when she left her phone on silent, the noise found her. She did what ghosts must do. She left at it was after midnight when the car pulled into the hangar. The building loomed industrial, anonymous, far from the velvet ropes and chandeliers of the gala. Fluorescent lights buzzed above polished floors, throwing cold reflections across the sleek fuselage of a jet. Lily stirred in her sleep beside her, head heavy on Monica's lap, a thumb tucked stubbornly into her mouth despite being too old for it. Her curls smelled faintly of apples from that evening's bath. Miss Harris, the driver said quietly, holding the door. There, waiting. Monica smoothed a hand over Lily's hair before lifting her carefully. The girl mumbled, clinging instinctively. Monica whispered back, "It's okay, sweetheart. We're just going somewhere quieter." Her heels clicked on the hangar floor, the sound unnervingly loud in the cavernous space. Ahead, a figure emerged. From shadow, tall, tailored, carrying the kind of presence that silenced rooms. Adrian, the billionaire. His smile was subtle, almost apologetic. "I hope the timing wasn't too abrupt." "It was necessary," Monica replied. Her voice was calm, though her chest tightened with the weight of admitting it. Necessary. As if safety had become a luxury item. He glanced at Lily, then back at Monica. "I've arranged a cabin where she can sleep. No interruptions." She nodded, adjusting her daughter against her shoulder. Lily's breath was warm on her collarbone, grounding her. "Come," Adrian said gently, gesturing toward the jet. Inside, the hush was immediate. Leather seats, muted lighting, the faint hum of readiness. Everything designed to soothe, to erase edges. Monica settled Lily into a reclining seat, tucking a blanket around her small frame. She lingered there, brushing strands of hair from her daughter's forehead, before finally sitting opposite Adrian. For a while, neither spoke. The engine stirred, a vibration that reminded Monica of another night, years earlier, Daniel slamming a suitcase shut, telling her she was ungrateful as he booked a business trip she hadn't been consulted about. The echo of that humiliation clung to her skin now. Adrian broke the silence. "You don't owe anyone an explanation." Monica looked at him sharply. "Don't I?" They've already written their narrative. Ex-wife clings to scraps while he parades his happiness. His eyes softened. "You're not a footnote, Monica." She almost laughed. "Funny. That's exactly how it feels. Adrian leaned back, studying her. He was practiced at silence, using it like a scalpel. It was both comforting and unnerving. Finally, he said, Daniel thrives on spectacle. You don't. That's not weakness, it's survival. You've chosen something harder, to walk away. Walk away. The phrase lodged deep. She remembered walking away from dinner tables half-eaten because Daniel mocked the way she held a fork. Walking away from conversations because fighting meant endless punishment. Walking away from mirrors because the woman reflected back looked smaller every year. She had been walking away her entire marriage. And now again, only this time, with Lily in her arms. The jet lifted. City lights scattered below like fallen stars. Monica pressed her forehead against the window, watching them blur. Do you ever worry, she asked suddenly, that money doesn't just protect, it erases? Makes people invisible? Adrian tilted his head. Explain. My marriage. The charities. The galas. Everything polished and perfect. People saw what they wanted. No one asked questions, not really. Daniel knew that. He counted on it. Wealth bought silence. She paused, her throat tight. I'm afraid of disappearing into it again. Adrian considered her words. Wealth can erase, yes, but it can also illuminate. The difference lies in who controls it. His voice was steady, but Monica heard the undertone. Control was always the unspoken currency. She folded her hands tightly in her lap, nails digging into her palm. She hated the tremor in her voice when she whispered, I can't afford to lose myself again. Not for Lily. Adrian's gaze flicked to the sleeping child. Then don't. Let this be your foundation, not your cage. Foundation. Cage. Two sides of the same coin. Hours passed in a blur of engine hum and silence. At some point, Adrian retreated to his cabin, leaving Monica alone with the window and her thoughts. She watched Lily's chest rise and fall under the blanket. Each breath steadied her. Each breath reminded her why she had boarded this plane at all. But as the horizon bled with dawn, she couldn't shake the feeling that the past wasn't finished with her. Daniel would not let her fade quietly. He never had. And in this new, rarefied air of wealth and sanctuary, Monica realized something that chilled her. Safety and captivity often looked the same at first. She closed her eyes, gripping her daughter's hand beneath the blanket. Whatever lay ahead, scandal, revenge, or erasure, she would have to decide quickly whether Adrian's world was a lifeboat or another gilded prison. The jet soared on, silent and unstoppable, while the city below kept talking. The house smelled of cedar polish and ambition. Daniel had always been meticulous about appearances. The lawn trimmed to military precision, the foyer chandelier glimmering with fresh crystal bulbs, the family portraits hung at perfect eye level. To the outside world, the Harris home was a monument. Success, stability, the American dream in stucco and glass. Inside, however, ghosts clung to the walls. A tea breakfast. Lily sat at the long dining table, a bowl of cereal growing soggy before her. Daniel entered in a tailored navy suit, the kind that photographed well under fluorescent courtrooms and gala spotlights alike. Morning, princess, he said, pressing a kiss onto her hair. His smile was wide, but his eyes flicked to the untouched. Cereal. Not eating. Lily shrugged. Not hungry. Daniel crouched to her level, voice soft but sharp beneath the surface. You need your energy. Daddy has a busy day. We don't want you fainting at school, do we? The word we hung heavy. Lily lowered her eyes and lifted the spoon obediently. Sophia breezed in a moment later, her laughter as practiced as her curls. She touched Daniel's arm lightly, greeting Lily with an overly bright, "Good morning, sweetheart." Lily muttered something polite. In her notebook, tucked just out of sight, she had scribbled her mother's name 3 times in pink marker. School was no refuge. Children repeated what they overheard. Is it true your mom left because your dad found someone better? A girl whispered at recess, the cruelty casual, like gossip about cartoons. Lily flushed, clutching her juice box. She didn't answer. Another voice chimed in. I saw them online. Your dad's fiance has a ring bigger than my whole hand. The girls laughed, skipping away. Lily sat on the edge of the sandbox, knees pressed together, a lump rising in her throat. She remembered her mother's voice, gentle, patient, telling her, you don't have to answer questions that hurt. But here, Silence was its own kind of wound. She pulled out the crayon drawing she always kept folded in her backpack. Me and Mommy. The crooked house, the pink smiles, the missing figure. She stared at it until the bell rang. That evening, Daniel's brand was thriving. He sat in his study, fielding calls from reporters and shaking hands with business partners eager to align themselves with his resurgence. The engagement had revived him, restored the shine lost during the divorce. Of course, he said into the phone, pacing. It was amicable. Monica and I remain dedicated co-parents. She's supportive of my future with Sophia. Supportive. He smiled at the word, savoring how it sounded. When he hung up, Lily lingered at the doorframe. Daddy. Yes, princess. Do you think Mommy will come back? The question cut deeper than he let show. His pause was too long. Finally, he crouched again, hands on her shoulders. Mommy loves you, but she needs time. You have me now. And Sophia. We'll take care of you. Lily blinked. But I want Mommy. His jaw tightened. He forced a chuckle, smoothing her hair. You'll see her soon, darling. Don't worry. But his eyes had hardened, the way they always did when control slipped from his grip. Monica remembered those eyes that eye in flashbacks. She could see them even now. The nights when Daniel returned home late. The smell of whiskey faint but undeniable. Where were you? She'd asked once, voice trembling but steady enough to carry. Daniel laughed, setting his keys down with a clatter. Working, Monica. Providing. What do you think I do out there, party? I just asked, and I answered. His tone sliced, sharp as glass. Why must you always twist things? Always suspect. Gaslighting. Her therapist would later name it. But in those moments, she only knew the sensation of her reality slipping, her certainty unraveling. Another memory. Daniel buying her a dress for a gala. Wear this, he said. The red brings out your hair. She had chosen blue instead. A quiet rebellion. That night, he whispered in her ear, smiling for the cameras, never embarrass me like that again. It was always dressed as care, as love, until she began to believe her own instincts were flawed. Now, back in his home, those old patterns crept into Lily's world. Sophia insisted on family dinners, staging them like advertisements. We're a unit, she declared, sliding roasted chicken onto plates, her diamond flashing in the chandelier light. Children thrive on stability. Lily pushed peas around her plate. Daniel corrected her posture. Sit up, princess. Properly. Small corrections. Small violences. The ghosts of control had found a new stage. Custody negotiations simmered in the background. Monica's absence had given Daniel room to maneuver, to cultivate an image of stability. His lawyers emphasized routine, environment, continuity of care. She's traveled. One attorney murmured in court documents. The child needs roots. Monica read the filings with shaking hands. Roots. As if love were measured in property lines instead of presence. Meanwhile, Daniel's camp spun narratives. Monica as unstable, Monica as restless, Monica as unreliable that IT was theater, and Daniel was always the star. But ghosts have their ways of making themselves known. One night, after Sophia tucked Lily into bed, Daniel entered to say goodnight. He found her asleep, clutching the pink crayon drawing tight against her chest. The crooked house. The two smiling figures. No father. Daniel stared at the paper, something twisting in his chest. He wanted to rip it, burn it, erase it. But he didn't. Instead, he stood there longer than necessary, the smile on his face slowly unraveling until it was gone. Outside the room, the house hummed with its artificial calm. Cedar polish, ambition, control. But inside, ghosts stirred. And they were not done with him. The gates whispered open as the car rolled down a drive lined with olive trees, their branches swaying in the coastal breeze. The mansion appeared at the end, glowing softly against the night. Modern glass and stone, perched like a fortress above the sea. Home, Adrian said quietly, though the word landed heavily. Monica shifted in her seat, watching the lights flicker across Lily's sleeping face. She had never liked the word home when someone else chose it for her. Inside, silence was curated. No street noise, no curious neighbors. Just the rhythmic hush of waves below, as if the world itself had conspired to keep secrets here. Servants took their coats discreetly, eyes lowered. Adrian led them into a living room where glass walls opened onto the ocean. the horizon faint under a sliver of moonlight. Monica sat on the edge of the sofa while Lily woke slowly, blinking. "Where are we, Mommy?" Monica smoothed her daughter's curls. "Somewhere safe." Adrian crouched near them, his expression softer than Monica expected. "You can explore tomorrow, little one. There's a garden with swings. And a library, bigger than any school." Lily's eyes widened, but she burrowed into her mother's side. Safety wasn't measured in libraries. It was measured in touch. Later, after Lily fell asleep in a guest room lined with plush toys that looked too new, Monica walked the halls alone. She paused at a balcony. Below, the ocean churned against rocks, relentless, eternal. Above, the house hummed, temperature controlled, fragrance diffused, every surface polished. It was a world of insulation, carefully designed to protect, but protection came with a price. She could feel it, even in the air. When she turned, Adrian was there, leaning in the doorway. His presence filled the space without trying. "You don't have to wander alone," he said gently. "I'm used to it." Monica replied. He stepped closer, his voice low. "I know you've been burned. Daniel left scars, visible and not. But I want you to know, this is your space. Not a cage. Not a bargain." Monica let the words sit, but her chest tightened anyway. Daniel had once said something similar. "This is all for you, Monica. Everything I build for us." Promises had teeth. They sat opposite each other, the sea between them a dark backdrop. "I'll be honest," Adrian said finally, his tone more business than comfort. "Daniel will fight. Men like him don't surrender what they consider theirs." "He doesn't consider me his anymore," Monica said. "Just Lily." "Which is worse," Adrian countered. "He'll use her as leverage. You need resources, lawyers who understand not just custody law, but power games. I can provide that." The bluntness rattled her. "You're offering to fund my war?" He didn't blink. "I'm offering to win it." Monica stared at him. Gratitude warred with unease. The words felt like salvation, but the certainty in his tone carried its own weight. "And what do you want in return?" she asked quietly. Adrian's expression flickered. Something unreadable, then gone. "For you to stop looking over your shoulder. For Lily to grow up unbroken. That's enough." But Monica wasn't naive. Nothing in his world was ever enough. Without strings, flashbacks stirred uninvited. Daniel after their first child custody hearing, pulling her aside. "Don't make this ugly, Monica. Think about the press. Think about your reputation. I can protect you if you stop fighting me." Protection had always meant obedience. Now here was Adrian, offering the same word with a different suit. Protection. The difference was that with Daniel, she hadn't had a choice. With Adrian, she did. Or at least it seemed that way. The next morning, Lily raced barefoot through the halls, her laughter echoing as she discovered hidden nooks and a sunlit garden with roses taller than she was. She looked freer than Monica had seen her in weeks. Adrian watched from a distance, hands in his pockets. "She's resilient," he said. "She shouldn't have to be." Monica murmured. He nodded, as if filing that thought away. Then, casually, "I've made a few calls already. A judge I trust. A senator who owes me a favor. You won't have to stand alone." The words chilled her, though she smiled politely. Judges, senators, favors. This wasn't just sanctuary. It was strategy. A war fought in smoky back rooms. Long before any courtroom doors opened, she thought of Lily, spinning in the garden, face tipped toward the sun. Would this world protect her or swallow her whole? That night, when Monica tucked Lily in, the girl whispered, "Are we staying here forever?" Monica kissed her forehead. "No, baby. Just for now." But in her chest, the answer was heavier. Forever was a dangerous word. She lay awake long after Lily slept, the ocean outside pounding against the cliffs. Adrian's offer echoed in her mind. "I can provide. I can win." She had walked away from Daniel's control only to step into another man's fortress. Was this freedom, or just a gilded leash? As dawn bled over the horizon, Monica realized she would have to choose soon. Accept Adrian's lifeline or risk drowning alone. Either way, someone else was writing rules for her life. And she was running out of time to seize the pen back. The morning paper made it official. A grainy black and white photo. Daniel leaving a courthouse in sunglasses, jaw set, the caption beneath, "Father fights for custody." Monica nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, Nothing was funny anymore. But because of the precision, Daniel knew how to stage manage a narrative better than any PR firm. He wasn't fighting for custody. He was fighting for a headline. Her lawyer, Rivera, laid the paper between them on the oak table in the private office. This is how he wants to play it. Monica touched the edge of the photograph. Daniel's hand in his pocket, his other holding the door, a posture rehearsed 100 times. He doesn't even care about her, she said softly. He cares about the performance. Rivera didn't flinch. Performance is evidence in the court of public opinion. He leaned forward. And you, Monica, need to be ready for war. The word war sat heavy. She never wanted one. She wanted escape, silence, a safe orbit for her daughter. But here, she was, back on the battlefield, just a different theater. The PR war be noon. Monica's phone pulsed with alerts. Opinion blogs. Think pieces. Daniel's allies in the media called him devoted father, unjustly cut off. A columnist even compared his fight to Odysseus reclaiming his home. Odysseus, Monica muttered under her breath as she scrolled. The irony stung. In that story, Penelope waited. She was not waiting. She was running .at3. She met a discreet PR advisor in a dim cafe tucked behind tinted windows. A woman named Claire, hair in a severe bun, voice low and precise. You don't need to outshine him, Claire said, stirring her tea. You need to look consistent, stable, a mother who prioritizes her child's emotional well-being. The more dramatic he becomes, the calmer you must appear. And when he lies? Monica asked. Claire's gaze sharpened. Then we document. Quietly. No denials. Just evidence. Monica exhaled. Evidence. The word was clinical, detached. But her life was anything but. The daughter that evening. Her daughter clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter than usual. The girl's hair, still damp from her bath, clung to her forehead. Daddy says you don't like him anymore, she whispered. Monica froze. The words weren't her daughter's. They were Daniel's, filtered through a child too young to separate. Truth from weapon. I don't like what Daddy does sometimes, Monica said carefully, kneeling down so her eyes met her daughter's. But I will always make sure you're safe. Always. The girl nodded, but her eyes carried confusion. A storm too large for a small body. Monica hugged her, wishing love could act as armor. The whispered meeting 2 nights later, Rivera called her into his office after hours. The city skyline glowed through the glass. Sharp and merciless, he slid a printed email across the desk. This came from a secure source. Monica read it once. Then again. A transfer of funds. Large. To a consultant known for burying stories, intimidating witnesses, rewriting reputations. Daniel's name was not on the email, but the trail wasn't. Subtle. Her throat went dry. So it's not just PR. He's buying silence. Maybe more. Rivera's eyes were steady. This moves it from family court into something darker. Criminal, depending on how far it goes. Monica pressed her palms together. She wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse. But she only asked one question. Can we prove it? Rivera hesitated. Not yet. But this is leverage. And leverage wins wars. The private investigator. The following week, Monica found herself in the company of a woman who introduced herself as Fallon. Former cop, now investigator. Sharp leather jacket, sharper gaze. I don't take sides, Fallon said bluntly. I take facts. You want to know if he's clean? You hire me. But be clear. Sometimes the truth isn't what you want it to be. Monica nodded. I've lived with his truth for years. I want facts. Fallon tilted her head, studying her. People like your ex, they're charming because charm covers rot. Question is, how deep do you want me to dig? Monica's answer came out steady, though her insides trembled. Until I know what I'm really up against. Rituals broken. Meanwhile, Daniel performed his own theater. Photos with his daughter. Ice cream cones, carousel rides, staged laughter under paparazzi lenses. On social media, comments flooded. Finally, a dad stepping up. But inside their old house, cracks deepened. The little girl came home from visits carrying gifts too extravagant for her age, diamond bracelets for dolls, dresses with designer tags. She whispered about trips she didn't want, promises she didn't understand. It bedtime. She asked Monica, why do I have to smile when I don't feel like it? The question cut deeper than any legal motion. The first court date. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and nerves. Cameras clicked outside as Daniel strode in, arm draped over his fiance's shoulder like a prize he'd already won. Monica kept her head down, her lawyer beside her. She felt the eyes of strangers scanning her, measuring her hair, her dress, her calmness. Inside, the judge set the schedule for custody hearings. Rivera whispered, "This is only the beginning." Monica looked across the aisle. Daniel smiled. At her. Not warm, not kind. A smile meant for war. Late night reflection that night. In the quiet of the mansion's guest room where her daughter slept soundly, Monica opened her laptop. The email was still there. The payment, the consultant, the shadowy trail. She traced the numbers with her eyes until the screen blurred. She thought of all the small humiliations, apologies that never were, love laced with control, the way Daniel once insisted she wear a certain dress because it made her look like a proper wife. This was not new. This was just the same manipulation, scaled up, armored by money and public opinion. Her reflection in the dark screen looked older than she remembered, but steadier too. Closing note she whispered to herself, barely audible. "You wanted a war, Daniel. Fine. But this time, I won't fight on your stage. I'll fight on mine." And with that, Monica saved the email into a secure folder and shut the laptop. The lines had been drawn. The courtroom calendar moved forward, but in the silence of the ex-wife's borrowed bedroom, time bent backwards. Every box packed, every journal page turned, every sleepless night seemed to drag her toward a place she had sworn she'd never revisit. Trauma, she learned, was not a locked door. It was a hallway, and the slightest sound could open every room. Inside it, her daughter was the first to falter. It happened in the middle of a Thursday, after a therapy session that was supposed to be routine. The girl sat in the back seat, arms folded tight, whispering that she didn't want to go back to her father's house for visitation. At first, it sounded like ordinary teenage protest. But then came the details, the strange rules, the way he hovered, the phone calls he made her overhear, the way she never felt free to breathe unless he was out of the room. The ex-wife gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles whitened. These were not just complaints, they were echoes. She had lived those same constraints, dressed differently, but cut from the same cloth. Gaslighting disguised as guidance, control masquerading as care. That night, the daughter spoke again, this time to the therapist. She described a recurring nightmare. The sound of footsteps outside her door, her father's voice at odd hours, the gut-clenching fear that she couldn't say no without paying a price. The therapist didn't move quickly, didn't alarm her. Instead, she asked the girl to describe how she felt. And the word she chose landed in the room like a gavel. Trapped. For the ex-wife, the revelations were shards of memory dragged to the surface. She remembered nights when apologies came with expensive gifts, when silence was demanded as a condition of peace. She remembered the way her husband's temper flickered just behind the polished smile, the sharp edge of a man who wanted the world to see him as benevolent. Insomnia returned. She would lie awake in the Billionaire's spare room, hearing nothing but the hum of the air conditioner, yet feeling her chest tighten as if someone were still watching her. Once, a door creaked in the hallway, and she jolted upright, heart hammering against her ribs. Trauma lived inside ordinary sounds. Every hinge, every sigh, every phone notification. The billionaire tried to help, offering her quiet walks through manicured gardens, dinners where he filled the silence with stories of his own scars. But she felt a new fear, the danger of leaning too heavily on another man, of allowing safety to come with strings she might not see until it was too late. When the attorney spoke of testimony, she froze. To testify meant to relive, to give voice. To abuse meant cracking open the memories she had only begun to fold away. Yet her daughter's small, shaking hands forced the decision. Protecting her child was no longer an abstraction. It was as immediate as breath. The legal team prepared her gently, but firmly. They rehearsed questions in a quiet room, asking her to recount humiliations that once felt invisible, the time he corrected her in front of friends, the way he tracked her spending, the late-night confrontations where he demanded she smile even when her skin burned with anger. They reminded her that these details, while small, formed a mosaic of control. But the courtroom was not her greatest fear. It was the silence between sessions, The way her daughter curled on the couch with headphones too big for her head, music turned up high to drown out thoughts. It was the way her daughter startled at raised voices, or how she sat too still at family dinners, rehearsing perfection so as not to be noticed. Trauma had unspooled into their lives like thread from a torn dress, impossible to tuck back in neatly. The ex-wife knew the unraveling could destroy them, or it could be the beginning of stitching something new. As dawn broke one sleepless morning, she sat at the edge of her bed, decision hardening in her chest. She would testify, not for revenge, not even for herself, but for the small voice in the back seat of a car that whispered, "I don't want to go back." The war was no longer about custody, reputation, or even survival. It was about truth. And truth, once spoken, had the power to shatter everything. The courthouse smelled faintly of bleach and old wood polish, a mix that clung to the marble floors and the heavy oak benches. It wasn't just another case. The air itself seemed to hum with the tension of gossip columns and media vans parked outside. This wasn't only about custody or fraud or betrayal. It was about perception, about whose story America would believe. The ex-husband strode in first, tailored suit gleaming under the fluorescence. He smiled with that same polished grin he had wielded in interviews, shaking the hand of a reporter before slipping into his seat at the defense table. He looked like a man wrongfully accused, a father unfairly maligned, a public figure desperate to restore his name. It was performance, but for many, it was convincing. The ex-wife entered quietly, flanked not by cameras but by her attorney and a silent determination that burned through her exhaustion. She wore no designer dress, no jewelry, just a dark blazer, her hair tied back. The contrast was intentional. She knew every gaze would weigh her like evidence. Was she maternal enough, fragile enough, believable enough? Her daughter was not. In the room, too young, the judge had decided. Instead, a sealed video deposition would later be played, a choice that both relieved and haunted her. Opening salvos, the prosecution framed the ex-husband as a man who lived a double life, loving father in public, manipulative abuser in private. Their narrative leaned on financial records, on testimonies from former employees, on a thin but damning paper trail. The defense countered swiftly. He was the provider, they argued, the one who gave stability while his ex-wife spiraled into bitterness. The billionaire's sudden role was painted as opportunistic, a wealthy man preying on a vulnerable mother. It was, the defense insinuated, less about protection and more about leverage. In those first hours, the courtroom became theater. Lawyers interrupted each other, objections flew, and the judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Every word carried consequences, not just legally but emotionally. Witnesses, a nanny testified first. Her voice shook as she recounted late nights where the daughter cried herself to sleep, small details of raised voices behind closed doors, and instructions from the ex-husband to keep appearances. She wasn't perfect, her hesitations gave the defense room to poke holes, but her testimony planted seeds. Then came a former business associate. He admitted to facilitating payments that blurred the line between personal and professional expenses. One email, projected on a giant courtroom screen, revealed language that suggested coercion. Make sure she doesn't talk. It was vague enough to question, but chilling enough to land heavy. The defense brought their own arsenal. Family friends who painted the ex-husband as generous, a psychologist hired to suggest the ex-wife suffered from distorted memory recall. Each word felt like a weapon turned back on her. The daughter's voice midway through the proceedings, the daughter's recorded testimony was played. The courtroom hushed as her small, steady voice filled the space. She described being told not to upset Daddy, of staying quiet when she saw things she didn't understand, of drawing pictures she later threw away because he wouldn't like them. It wasn't explosive, but it was raw. The silences between her sentences spoke louder than her words. Even the judge leaned forward. The ex-wife gripped the table so tightly her knuckles whitened. She wanted to run to her daughter, shield her, but instead she sat motionless, letting the world watch their pain dissected into evidence. Shifting momentum, the pivotal moment came with an overlooked piece of evidence. A voice memo recovered from an old phone. A heated argument between husband and wife, his voice cutting, hers pleading, the child crying faintly in the background. The authenticity was verified. the defense scrambled. They claimed it was taken out of context, an isolated moment in years of otherwise normal family life. But the damage was done. The courtroom, once balanced, tilted toward the ex-wife. The emotional cost every day ended the same way. The ex-wife leaving through side doors to avoid cameras, the billionaire trailing just far enough behind not to seem like a savior. Nights were harder. She lay awake replaying cross-examinations, the sting of character assassinations, the weight of her daughter's fragile courage in quiet moments. She wrestled with the line between justice and revenge. Did she want him punished for the crimes he committed, or did she simply want to see him broken the way he had broken her? That moral tension hung heavy, fueling the trial's final days, toward a verdict as the prosecution prepared closing arguments. The ex-wife felt the weight of the entire arc of her life pressing down. The betrayal of marriage, the scars of manipulation, the fragile hope of motherhood, and now, this room where truth and lies were indistinguishable until 12 strangers decided otherwise. The stage was set. The next chapter would bring judgment. The courtroom was silent, as if the air itself had been commanded to stillness. Cameras clicked once, then hesitated, the press sensing what the jury foreperson's words would soon carry. The judge's gavel tapped, summoning centuries of ritual into this single moment. For weeks, testimony had pulled everyone through tunnels of humiliation and revelation. Experts parsed financial trails, therapists explained trauma's fingerprints, and witnesses oscillated between loyalty and survival. But here, in the final minutes, the spectacle shrank to a handful of syllables. We, the jury, find. The ex-wife's breath held at the ellipsis. Her daughter, seated 2 rows behind, squeezed her own hands white. Across the aisle, the ex-husband fixed a mask of stoicism, though the smallest twitch in his jaw betrayed the empire of worry beneath. Different kinds of justice, whether it was guilty or not guilty, whether the verdict handed him prison time or another carefully managed settlement. The truth was already scattered across headlines. The public had chosen sides long ago. His charm, his money, his curated image, these remained weapons sharper than any lawyer's brief. But the ex-wife knew that verdicts were never simple. A conviction would not erase nights of fear. An acquittal would not mean her memories had been lies. Even victory, should it come, carried its own toll. Her daughter's face etched forever in news archives, her private scars bound into legal transcripts. Justice, she realized, was less about the gavel's strike and more about what came after. Could she rebuild? Could her daughter learn to walk into a classroom without whispers tracing her spine? Could life be wrestled back from traumas? Long shadow? The aftermath reporters swarmed the courthouse steps, shouting questions like stones. The ex-wife's lawyer advised her not to answer, but silence carried its own narrative. The ex-husband paused before microphones, voice steady, eyes moist at just the right moments. Mastering yet another performance, home, the aftermath took quieter forms. Breakfasts made, school runs resumed, therapy appointments doubled. The daughter flinched at sudden noises, but slowly learned to stretch her laughter again, as if testing whether joy could be trusted. The ex-wife kept routines soft and steady, building new rituals to replace the broken ones. There were legal consequences too: divided assets, custody boundaries redrawn, media contracts circling like vultures. Yet the hardest negotiations happened in the silence of their kitchen, where the ex-wife weighed revenge against repair. Did she pursue civil suits, drag every last secret into the light, or did she choose exile, building a life far from tabloids? In courtrooms, small triumphs one evening, her daughter asked if they could cook together. Just pasta, nothing fancy. The ex-wife handed her the knife, heart trembling at the trust contained in that small act. Another night, she overheard her daughter on the phone, laughing with a friend without hesitation, no shadows in her tone. These were victories no jury could deliver, fragile but real. The ex-wife began journaling again. Some entries were jagged: anger, disbelief, the itch of unfinished revenge. Others softened into gratitude: her daughter's steady breathing and sleep, the warmth of a neighbor leaving soup on the porch, the luxury of a night without nightmares. Choosing what heals in the end, the choice was not about what happened to him. The court had spoken. History would write its own version of the trial. Her real decision lay elsewhere: how to inhabit the rest of her life. Public vindication promised a kind of cleansing, yet also tethered her forever to his name. Quiet exile offered peace, but also erasure. A new life, new city, new school, new rituals, meant beginning again, not as victim or combatant, but as mother. When her daughter asked one morning, "Are we safe now?" the ex-wife answered honestly, "We're safer. And we're stronger." That was as close to certainty as truth allowed. Closing images. The book of their shared past was not closed. Trauma has no neat epilogue, but its weight could be shifted page by page. In the final images, the ex-wife and daughter walked together along a beach at dusk, the tide erasing footsteps as quickly as they were made. She carried no speech, no declaration, just the quiet conviction that survival itself was its own form of verdict. The future stretched uncertain, yes, but uncertainty was a horizon, not a cage. Revenge might glitter, but healing demanded something slower, less cinematic, more enduring. The patient, stubborn act of living. And so they did.